Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar where we're going to be talking about taking your branding to the next level, but perhaps not in a way that you've thought about before. We're going to be talking about something called audio branding. Um, I'm Emma. I'm commercial manager for Comtec Translations. We are a culture and translation partner, and we support clients all around the world into over 250 languages. I'm joined today by Ewan from AVC. Ewan is the delivery director at AVC and leading teams working with clients such as Nationwide, JD, and Subway, delivering audio and visual services to clients. Ewan, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you'll do a much better job. You've also had lots of incredible experience in radio, so I think that would be fantastic to just talk a bit about that and how that's kind of led you to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Emma. Hello, I'm Ewan McMorrow. I am the delivery director at AVC, which means I oversee our teams making content in multiple formats, visual and audio. My path to here came through audio, so from being a very young boy, I wanted to be a DJ on the radio. Realized actually I was going to be a rubbish DJ, so switched to producing and running radio stations and sorting out the music for them, which I did, I think, fairly successfully in my career because I really enjoy connecting audiences and making people feel something, especially through the music that is played. So I worked at radio stations across Scotland and across England, doing all that. Took me to AVC, where now the music that we play goes all around the world. And delights audiences for retailers and hospitality, especially throughout Europe.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We've had quite a few really interesting chats, haven't we?
Yeah,
Um, I always find it fascinating speaking with you, understanding about how you kind of curate the music that you do to work with the different clients that you have. And we've noticed during our chats the similarities actually between what we do, in that, obviously you're curating kind of playlists for and music content for your clients. We're looking at obviously kind of translating content and really making sure that that content's going to land
yeah.
in the market that we're going into. So there was quite a big crossover in what we do, and yeah, always find it fascinating. So I'm really looking forward to diving into this a little bit more. So for the purposes of just kind of clarifying for the audience that today probably is our audience going to be a bit more kind of marketing and creative. They might not necessarily have come across the term audio branding before. So can you explain a bit about what that is?
Sure. Audio branding, in a nutshell, is what your brand sounds like to the consumer. And what I find when I start working with brands and marketers, they really have a good feel about how their brand looks. For everything
Yeah,
from the logo that represents the brand through to the color schemes that they use, and they massively have that nailed down. And it's probably written down somewhere in a
yeah,
document about this is what the brand looks like. Some people might even have, especially if they're active on social media, they might have tone of voice guidelines, so how the brand talks, how the brand reacts to people, and so on. But very few have thought about how the brand sounds. And sound is one of our senses. There are only five of them, and yet very few people think about how they can use sound to change how people feel about the brand, how people interact with their brand, and how people are moved by the brand as well. Because music, especially, can be very emotional and drive emotionals, not always in a bad way, but also in a positive way. So yeah, that's what audio branding is. But very few brands really have a vision for how their brand can sound and all the different things that mean. The biggest components of that, as I've spoken about, are music, which music is almost a universal experience across cultures, across age groups, across decades, centuries. Even music has been a part of culture, but it's also about the sound of the spoken voice that you use in adverts or social media posts or videos and so on as well.
that's interesting actually, that as well. It's not just about the music but also about voices as well. That's really interesting. um so what are kind of some of the ways that consumers experience music when interacting with brands?
My bread and butter is what people hear when they're in a brand's store.
Hmm.
So whether that is a physical store selling something or a hospitality unit that is obviously selling something, but then people stay a little bit longer to consume the food as well. And that's when you're experiencing the brand probably in the most physical way that you will when you're in a brand store. And then the music, it sounds kind of arty, but music in one of those spaces will surround you like air. So even if you're looking at a physical product on a shelf, you will not see the color palettes that we spoke about. You might not see the logo that we spoke about, but the music is still there. And if it's doing its job, you won't even realize it's still there. It's just affecting how
Yeah.
you are at that moment in time and leaving a mark on you as you're there. But audio branding is about a lot more than that because you think about where your brand is heard. So social media, if you've got videos going off on TikTok or Reels on Instagram or whatever, you will have sound on those.
Hmm.
And that should be, for me, there should be complete consistency across that. So if you've got really cool music on your social media platforms, but then you walk into a store and it's really cheesy pop music or something, there's a
Yeah.
jar there. You're not really defining what your brand sounds like, or it sounds like two different things. You wouldn't have a different logo for your company on your social media profile as is on the front of the stores, but so many brands have very different sounds as you cross all these different touch points.
Yeah.
You've also got radio ads, television ads, and a lot more ways. I think about brands put on events. There's music playing at those, or an event will always sound like something. Corporate videos are always a classic where they will sound like they've been put together by a corporate communications department and not something that represents the brand. Uh, Even companies that have phone lines, what does the phone hold music represent the brand, or is it something that's called generic phone music dot MP3, which really denigrates what the brand sounds like when a consumer phones up? And consumers don't phone up for a bit of fun; they're phoning up because they've got an
Yeah.
issue from the authorities. So here's a chance to actually bring them down a little bit, and to also get your brand values across in sound.
Yeah, there's so much more, isn't there? There's so much to think about. And I bet there's so much that kind of that yeah, like I say, that we don't think about that's affecting us in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And it's really there's really an opportunity there, isn't there? If people kind of think about it, how they can really maximize their branding within this space.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, you've kind of answered another question that I had about opportunities for people, particularly for marketers. I would say marketers and kind of our creative audience, who I think would be particularly interested in this topic. So the opportunities for them, even if they're not working in like a physical retail space, you've obviously just taken us through all the different elements and all the different ways in which all the different opportunities there are. Um, why is audio so important? You mentioned that it affects us in a way that maybe other elements of branding wouldn't or can't. But could you just kind of explain why it's so important and what does it bring to the table more than
Yeah.
maybe other more mainstream kind of elements of branding?
So think about every big life event in someone's life. So birthday parties, weddings, births, even divorces and breakups, those real big life events. Imagine them all without music.
Mm,
Music is such an intrinsic part of these big events. Why? Because the music affects us emotionally, probably more so or more generally than any other art form. Whether that is a wedding with great celebratory music and everyone having a good time, and the music
yeah,
plays such a part in that at a wedding. Or if we're going through a hard time, a divorce, a breakup, sad songs bring out comfort in us in some certain way. We use songs music to almost regulate our emotions or enhance our emotions. So
yeah.
music does really affect us psychologically. So then when you take that into what a brand sounds like, especially what it sounds like in a store,
Hmm.
it can drive how customers feel about your brand. So you can think of that as being like an exciting place to be, so you can play music that's got a tempo to it,
Yeah.
that's got lyrics to it that are exciting, and then your brand will feel like an exciting place to be. But you mentioned we work for with Nationwide. Now they're a bank or a building society, so we need to make sure the music makes people feel safe and secure. You know, if we were playing music that sounded all very risky and dangerous in a banking environment, that would be entirely wrong. But through music, we can drive that sort of feeling of safety and security there. You know that you're in safe hands here. I always think about when you're in a spa. You know, we're all used to going to a spa and there's that twinkly music with the
Yeah.
water sounds and all that sort of stuff, which relax you. If that was, US rap and hip hop music that was playing there,
It'd be a very
it
different
would be very
experience.
different. Yeah. So um, that's the sort of thing that you need to think about. And then it's really horses for courses. So our head office is in Newbury, and within 2 blocks, there are two very different stores. One's a fast food outlet with a massive, massive antisocial behavior problem, and one's a Danish arts and craft song shop. They play the exact same music, which is very light classical music, which the in the arts and craft shop, it just makes you feel relaxed. It makes you feel arty. You feel like you've got lots of space, and you're like, no, I'm not very arty, but I'm looking and going, maybe I could buy that canvas, or maybe I could buy those paints because I'm feeling creative because this music is lulling me into a safe place. The fast food store also plays classical music after 5 o'clock at night so that kids don't hang about. It's actually designed to get kids out of there and to
Really?
calm them down. They're playing
That's
almost the
so
exact same music, the
funny.
same tracks, but
Yeah.
it's having a very different effect on a very different set of customers.
Yeah.
And that's the power that music, that's a very extreme way of using music. But everything every time you're in a store and you hear music, it will be affecting people psychologically and moving their mindset into, well, you could move them into a more wanting to buy mindset, maybe even a take
Really?
risks mindset, so that, the
Wow.
fashion, if the music is cool, it makes people feel like I'm a bit cool in here. So actually, I will buy that because, it looks really
Buy
good
that
on me.
risque outfit.
So it's all having the right music for the brand, so it amplifies the brand, but also what that does to the customer when they're in that space, and it's not utilized, I think, enough by marketers. Lots of stores you will go in, and the music's there as a bit of a utility, kind of like there's a tick box that says, "Have we got music in store?"
Yeah.
Tick. Is it covering up? Because I don't know if you go into a store like a WH Smith's where they don't play music, but they sound awful if you listen to them. You can hear the tills, you can hear the person putting a trolley around and unpacking and putting things on the shelves. It sounds dreadful.
Yeah.
So music does cover up all of that, which is a utility part of music, but it can be so, so much more than that.
That's fascinating. I love where you say that it drives the consumer behavior. Um, which I guess we all know with particularly within marketing, what we're putting out there is hopefully going to drive consumer behavior in a certain direction. But actually, the fact that music can do that, like you said, the example where they're playing the same music in one place to give you that kind of calm, the calm kind of vibe, and then in the other place to actually chill out the kids that are sat there and ultimately get rid of them at a decent hour. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, it's exact same music, completely different results. One draws you in, and the other one pushes you away. And it's all about the different mindset, I think, of the audience. The antisocial kid in the fast food store is not going to go to the crafty shop and go, "Oh, those look like nice oil colors."
You never know. Probably not, though. Probably not. So obviously, some of the conversations we've had before, or a lot of them, have been about your clients, your international clients, and like I mentioned before about the kind of we've discussed the similarities between the things that you have to think about when you're working with your clients that are going into going global, the considerations there. In a similar way that we with our clients think about there are all sorts of different considerations when going into another market. Could when it comes to a company that's looking to go global, or perhaps they're already global, they're looking to kind of cement their brand image a bit or further, what are the practical considerations when choosing the right music?
I don't know what this says about me, but I'll use another fast food store analogy, which is I'm sure we've all been abroad and seen, for example, a McDonald's and gone, oh, I'll go in there. I know what I'm going to get. And yet you go in
No.
and you recognize some of the products that they're selling, but the other ones are local ones that you just not
Yeah.
you would not get
Yeah.
in the UK. And for me, it is very much the same as that. Is that if you're working internationally, you need to define your core. So who are you? Who's your desired audience? What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do through music? And you will find there that you have like a rod of steel through the middle of what you do. But then you have to really look at local iterations because otherwise you're going to be playing music that doesn't work culturally or just for the audience because we are all countries are all very different in how they consume music. And frankly, you'd probably be more of an expert at this than me. I can never see the rhyme nor reason as to why it is. For example, in France, French language music is very important to them. I had a look yesterday at the French chart. I think seven, no, all the top 10 tracks were in French
French.
there, whereas in the Netherlands, the
Yeah.
majority of the top 10 songs are in English.
Mm.
And that's they're all very open-minded cultures. So it's just a cultural thing about what people like to listen to and what people like to be surrounded by as well. So you have to look into that. And then there are just the different things that play out in different countries. So in parts of Scandinavia, the music that goes down well is slightly darker in feel and mood, and
Okay.
that's kind of what they like and what they're comfortable with. Whereas in sort of southern Mediterranean places, it might sound really stereotypical, but there's a lot more light inside the music and a lot more bounce inside the music that goes down well there. So when you have that sort of international core, if you like, like your signature burger or something like that, you have to have other offerings around there that represent the culture. Otherwise, you're in danger of just sounding like, when you watch one of those satellite TV channels where they play an advert that's been designed to be played in like 90 different countries and
Yeah.
not offend anyone, but it ends up just standing for nothing, then that's what you'll end up being like.
Yeah, no, totally. How much of kind of what you do is you've got a couple of considerations, haven't you, when you're going global? You're considering for your client, you're considering the branding and making sure that their brand is properly represented. You're also making sure, like you've just mentioned, that it's gonna fit culturally and that you're getting that right. How do you find balancing those two things within music? Is that a real challenge?
It's a real challenge, and it gets even more so if you look at sort of pop music, and I think most music, even if it's rap or rock
Hmm.
music, is pop music as a core. And if you look at the core elements of pop music through all time, it's things like sex, drink, drugs, rebellion, dancing, swearing. That's a lot to navigate because culturally the attitudes are so different to all those subjects globally around the world, or even
Yeah.
countries that border each other have very different attitudes to all those things.
Mm.
So you've got to be really, really careful about it because at best you might sound slightly irrelevant. At worst, you could sound offensive if you go on with, again, like what is really everyone finds acceptable in the UK is not acceptable somewhere else. In Sweden, now we don't do this, but in Sweden, they actually don't believe in censoring swear words in songs
Oh, really?
as a en masse. But if we took that and rolled it out across the UK, we'd be shut down pretty quickly. There's a lot to navigate, and you've got to balance. And we err on the side of caution because
Mm.
actually, causing offences, probably very, very the opportunity to cause offence is probably very large. However, at the same time, you've still got to stand for something. You've still got to be able to, show something through the music rather than, again, being so bland that you don't mean anything or you don't resonate with the audience.
Mm, yeah, definitely. And making sure that you have got that brand element in there. You haven't just kind of watered that down to the point that it's non-existent anymore, I guess.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
classic. Sorry.
yeah. No, 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 go for it.
There's a classic one going on at the moment, which is if you watch the American news or keep up with America, is that so many states have started to legalize certain drugs and they've become
Yeah,
very mainstream there. Whereas here, certainly here in the UK, it's not like that at all. So there's a lot of tracks being released where the drug references are now really explicit and really open and out there, which is exactly right for the US, and it really
yeah,
works for them because it resonates. It is their life. Whereas here in the UK, it's like, oh, God, they're singing about illegal things, so we can't actually be putting that out there. And it's we talk about the world getting smaller all the time and people becoming more similar, but they're just still, as I guess you guys know better than me,
absolutely.
so many differences out there
Oh,
culturally. Um,
100%.
so it's a lot to navigate and be very easy to mess up.
Yeah, that I can totally understand that. And like you say, the world, even though there's this impression that everything's kind of getting smaller and, that we're all kind of, able to communicate much easier with different technologies and, the kind of the borders between us, everything just feels like it's getting smaller. But actually what we find is that um that localization and really taking the time to make sure that the content, whether that's music, whether it's written content, whatever it is properly localized for the market that you're going into, as important as ever. And if you get it right, then you can really kind of foster that brand loyalty. If you get it wrong, you can basically almost bar yourself from that country altogether. I
Yes, yeah.
I know that you have plenty of stories when it comes to both getting it right and wrong because you've told me about them before, and I always love listening to this. But could you give us some examples of let's start with the nice ones. What are your biggest success stories when it comes to audio branding in other markets?
The one that I'm most proud of is the work that we did with JD. We've been working with them for nearly 10 years now. So when we started working with JD, they had really savvy on the marketing side of things, and they really brought on the JD brand so much. And they were really early adopters on digital media, and getting their message out that way.
Mm,
So much so that they had this really sharply defined brand on social media. You knew it was a JD picture if you saw a JD picture. You knew the JD attitude. They had
yeah.
YouTube series that were just ahead of the time in many cases, that were very cool. And yet they felt when you went in their stores, the music was a bit pop. It didn't really reflect that. So we worked really hard with JD to go, right, who is it that you want us to appeal to? Who are your audiences, that you want to be enjoying the music when you're in there? Then what sort of music can we appeal to them with? And we worked really hard to change from that sort of poppy style that didn't reflect the brand enough through to something that really did reflect the brand, to the point where certain artists would release songs. And one of the first comments on the YouTube videos underneath them would be, "Can't wait to hear this in JD," because we'd really put a stamp on what the JD sound
Wow.
was. And when I when I saw those, I was like, "Oh my God, I think we've really
That's
nailed something
amazing.
here."
Yeah.
Obviously, we've been working with them for 10 years, so that music changes, especially for the audiences that JD are going for, really fast. So we keep having to iterate and change and look at, what is it that the JD customer is listening to now, and what will they be listening to in 6 months, so that because
Yeah.
JD don't want to be a lagging company, they want to be, ahead. They
Hmm.
want to be leading the trends. So that for me is one of my most proudest ones. Also, the work we've done with Subway. Um, when we started working with them, they had no firm music. They just, you had to play music in a Subway store, was kind of the rule that was in place, and they wanted to bring that into something that was a little bit more focused, because as it was, you could walk into a Subway restaurant in London and it would be playing like rap music. It might be playing a BBC rap station. And
Mm.
if you went into one in Southampton, it might be playing like an older, middle of the road radio station.
Yeah.
So musically, when you walked into Subway, you were just getting a different thing no matter which
Yeah.
one you went into. And they wanted to, make that much more consistent. So there was a sound of Subway that reflected the things that Subway value. So the freshness of the food, a sort of upbeat feeling of positivity as well, and a sense of energy as well, because Subway, we eat, we get energy. So there was
Mm.
all that going on. So we did roll that out in the UK, and then did it across many countries in Northern Europe as well with them. And each one was very bespoke. So like when we moved into each territory, it was a very deep dive into what's popular musically there, what doesn't fly musically there, and then what is Subway music within all of that? What is it
Yeah.
acceptable for Subway to do? So that was another good one for me. But those are I think my two favorite projects that I've worked on.
Yeah, brilliant. What were the what are some examples of where people just it hasn't gone well, they haven't got it right?
I mean, no harm to anyone here, but always the horror stories work when non-experts get involved in the music. I don't want to sit here and boast and say I've worked for a lot of years with music and how music works with audiences, but I have. And are we all familiar with at the party when someone thinks that they'll get in control of the music and they'll just assume that everyone loves the same
Doesn't
music as
read the
they do,
room.
and it's like. And trust me, I have worked with deep like party DJs and so on, and man, those guys work really hard. And you think the guy at a party is like playing a record and playing another record? They are counting the number of people on the dance floor. They're counting how fast people get up. They're counting how much people walk
Oh,
away,
wow.
so they know which ones fill the floor. And they can kind of gauge maybe an age of an audience and what sort of music would be there. So when that person stands up and puts on their music on their phone and everyone goes, oh my God, no. And imagine if you do that across an entire retail estate or something like that, where the worst one that springs to mind was the MD of a company that we worked for, was a huge music fan, huge music buff, and thought that jazz was really appropriate for to play to some of the audience there, who were mostly 30, 40 something men who didn't really want any jazz. And we'd curated, some fantastic music that reflected their lifestyles. It gave them a bit of nostalgia for I Remember That. It gave them a bit of songs from now, so they didn't feel like old and nostalgic all the time. And then he wanted to play some jazz there. That didn't go down too well at all. And then the other one, which again, when we're talking about cultural things, is
Yeah.
controversial artists. So I think one of the things you can do for really not a lot of money at all is you can cement your brand with famous music artists in the retail space. You can't just go and stick a Katy Perry song or a Rihanna song on your Instagram reel, because that will end up costing you thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. But within the in-store environment, you can be playing these artists and have their image resonate with your brand as well. But so many artists end up getting cancelled. And again, we always err on the side of caution. So we can see someone going down that line of this person's going to cross the line, and we pull back from playing that person's music, because it really only takes one person to get offended and make a real fuss that you're playing this artist that has done something pretty horrible, for that to really resonate badly for the brand. But then we do get the sort of person, the marketer, going, I think Kanye West would be good to play here, but no, I wouldn't do Kanye West because he's only, 3 months away from another controversy. And then, 2 weeks later, you get that phone call going, yeah, could you take all the Kanye West songs off, please? We've been getting complaints. It's like, yeah, I told you. One of the things we do, we react really quickly when we sort of wake up on a Monday morning and someone's done something horrendously offensive on a Sunday night in American time, and it's like delete all those songs, get them off as fast as possible, because reputationally that is awful. But some people don't quite get that until they do get it.
Yeah. Gosh, you would like, yeah, absolutely. That must be a bit of a panic when you come in on Monday morning and someone's done something and you're having to scurry around and just remove them.
It's the it's all the person that gets into controversy. Let me tell you, like they're never just the main artist in a song. So finding all the Kanye West songs is
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's really easy. Take them off, and then you're like, oh my God, did Kanye West?
Oh,
Yeah,
of course,
Estelle.
speech. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Estelle featuring Kanye West, American Boy. Right, I need to go and find that one, and so on. So yeah, if you're a music artist and you're going to get in controversy, could you not have done lots of featurings on tracks, please? Thank you.
Do you have to have a really, really good memory to do your job as well?
Yes. We have a lot of music fans in the on the team that we've got all bases covered.
Yeah, I bet you'd have to. You'd have to. Brilliant. What would your three top tips be for our audience that want to think about using music more in their branding efforts, just like
Uh,
as a starting point?
I would get experts in, whatever that means to you. But again, when I spoke about brands are very well have their color guidelines, what the brand looks like, what the tone of voice looks like, written down. Far too often, all the pressure on what a brand sounds like sits with maybe a marketing assistant. It might be that someone is great at putting together a social media video, but the last thing they do is slap some music on the back of it. Is, oh, this needs a
Yeah.
bit of music. We'll use something there. I think it's way too important, as I hope I've got across what your brand sounds like, just to sit with someone who doesn't have a lot of experience in it, is maybe kind of just finding their way, or kind of worse most times, just playing their favorite songs and what they kind of think people would like to listen to. Um, Always treat music like a bit of marketing, so it's not that utility just to cover up the background noise or to sort of fill the silence in a social media video. I just think you can create an awesome brand presence through using really carefully curated music that resonates with the audience in whatever way you want to resonate with the audience. There will be a bit of music that does that job for you. And the other thing is, it costs about the same, like so using generic whatever music costs about the same as to use really highly curated,
Yeah.
effective music. So it's not a lot to actually bring that on board and do something that really works for you rather than it being an afterthought. And always, I think you guys would agree on this one, is start with the audience. So always start with, what do the audience want to hear? What do the audience want to feel? What do you understand about the audience's musical tastes and musical desires and so on? And if you make the
Mm.
audience the customer or the potential customer or the opportunity the most important thing in the whole music experience, then you won't be going wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. We completely would agree with that one. One bonus question as well, if I can. What would be sort of one top tip on a brand that's looking to go international with their with their branding efforts? What would one tip when it comes to audio branding? What would that be?
Don't think it will be easy. It will be, to get it right, it will be so different, and will take quite a lot of work to get it right. It's very
Yeah.
hard to sit somewhere in London and get the right music for your outlet in Cologne that also works in Dusseldorf. You really need to put in a lot of work and effort in understanding what is there. So don't think it's too easy, but you can, just very much like that fast food thing, you can have your signature sound if you like, but you do have to then spin that off locally. Otherwise, you're going to end up just being way too generic to make a point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 100%, understand and agree with that point. And I think that the message is really as well is if in doubt, research and ask the experts, I think is
Yeah.
probably a good point to leave it on. Well, thank you so much, Ewan. I always love speaking with you. I always find this whole topic fascinating, and I'm sure that the people watching will also have a lot to think about. Where can people find you if they want to talk more about audio branding?
You can find me on LinkedIn. There's not very many Ewan McMorrows there. In fact, I might be the only one. So, unlike when you're trying to find Dave Smith on LinkedIn, and that's really hard, finding Ewan McMorrow is usually quite easy. Or you can email me. It's Ewan, EUAN dot M at avcmedia.com, that's harder to spell. Find me on LinkedIn. It'll be much easier.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.